Hi, I'm Jason Mast, Field Sales Representative for DeKalb in Northern California. Today we're here pulling the planter out of the shop to go through a preseason checklist of things to cover, things to inspect before you head out to the field for the first time later on in the season. The things we're going to go through are applicable for any planter, regardless if your planter is not like this one behind me. A lot of these concepts are good concepts to go through for any color of planter that you might own. First thing I recommend doing is giving the planter a good wash. Get it out and get all that grime that's built up over the winter off. Get down to the bottom of the frame and the paint and make sure that you don't have any cracks or broken bolts, bent parts, things like that. Really give it a good inspection. It's a good time to take a tape measure, measure your spacing on your row units and your fertilizer knives, make sure that nothing drifted last season and came loose. And make sure that your planter is true and square, that everything is in the spot that it should be. I don't know about you, I didn't really go through this planter when I put it away last year. I was ready to be done planting for the season and parked it and didn't really think about it for the past few months. And I can't remember what was broken last year or what was off, and so it's really a good idea to go give it a thorough inspection end to end to make sure that everything is still lined up and square. The other very important thing to do is make sure that you cleaned out the seed from last year. If there's still seed from last year sitting in the bottom, I do not recommend planting that. The bottom of a planter is not a suitable place to store seed over winter. It's important to make sure you got the correct size planter plates for the size of seed that you're going to be planting this year, which means it's important to order your seed enough in advance to go get plates if you don't have them. As Becca talked about, all this information for the seed size that you're going to be using is right here on the bag tag, as we covered in the previous video. So make sure that you've got the plates you need in advance. Make sure that the plates that you're using all match. It's very common for me to see planters out there where they've accidentally mismatched their plates. So a little trick I like to do is take the serial number and write it in a Sharpie here on the plate so that it's easier to see and grab which plates you need as the season's going on. Those serial numbers can be kind of hard to read. So if you just write the serial number out in Sharpie, the last two digits on these white plates are the ones that indicate what seed size you should be planting. The next thing I recommend inspecting is your air system. If you didn't blow that dust out of there last winter, this is especially important. Condensation over the winter can cause that dust to harden and really get solidified inside of there. And so we got to get these end caps taken off, get a flashlight, take a real good look inside, make sure that we've got a clean, easy to inspect and easy to service throughout the season air system. As we can see, there is plenty of dirt inside of there. I didn't clean this one out last year before I put it away. So this is especially important to get some compressed air, blow this out, make sure that it's ready to go to start the season. Next, I'm going to show you how to inspect your disc openers. This here is a new disc opener, and it comes standard at 15 inches. That's a very, very standard size for disc openers. Now, according to the manual on this planter, they recommend that these be changed if they get any smaller than 14 inches. The proper way to measure a disc opener is to take it off and measure it from the back side, because the hub makes it really difficult to get a good, true measurement from the front. But you can get a pretty good read on the size of these if you just, get in here and take a look. These are 14.5 inches, so we got another ½ inch of wear life on them. But as they wear, the contact point of where those two openers touch each other changes. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how to inspect that. You need two standard business cards. You're going to slide one in from the front and the other in from the back. And see how close these two come together. When the blades will securely hold both those business cards, you can measure your contact points. If you need to, you can take a Sharpie, put a little mark in order to make it easier to measure. According to the manual, we want to be within 1 inch to 2 inches of blade-to-blade contact. This is about 1.5 inches right here, so these are true and within spec. Go ahead and check them across the whole planter, give them a spin, and check them in a few different places, because these blades can warp just a little bit across the season. And any blades that are loose, any blades that have bad bearings, or any blades that need to be re-shimmed, go ahead and get that out of the way before we get to the field. So if you get to the field and you realize that your blades are out of spec, they can get dirt in between them and seize up, and then they don't spin true. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is our drive tires here. Drive tires should be free of cracks and be able to hold air. If you're coming into the season and your drive tires already aren't holding air, it's time to take them off, take them into the tire shop and get that taken care of. because if these tires are different air pressures, that can cause problems. Another important thing to take a look at is the tire size recommended in your manual and the forward travel circumference for each of these tires. We can measure the rolling circumference of these tires by simply wrapping a tape measure around it tight and getting an idea how close we are to the recommended tire circumference. If it's not exact, that's okay, but you need to take that into consideration when you're setting the population for your planter. It's very common for corn planters to not match the population chart that's set on the gear ratios on these planters, and that all comes down to incorrect tire circumference. Very common problem here. So if you know that your tire size is a little too small, you're going to have a tendency to overplant based on what the chart says. If your tire size is too large, you're going to underplant based on what the chart says. So that's something important to take a look at before you get your season going. If you need to replace a tire, it's a very good idea to go ahead and replace both tires on the planter at the same time to ensure that they match. Matching tires is a very important thing because if they don't match, you're going to have a hard time getting an accurate seating rate. The next thing I recommend is you lubricate your drive chains. I like to use penetrating oil. It's got better lubrication than WD-40, but it's not as sticky and greasy as a chain and cable lube. That chain and cable lube tends to cause too much dirt and dust build up on those chains as they're moving through the field. You want to be very careful that you don't over lubricate those chains because that can cause problems if they get too dirty. It's important that those chains are smooth, spinning, and the correct size, that they haven't stretched too much and that they're not chattering there on those sprockets. If those sprockets get vibration in them, that's going to translate into those seat plates, and that's going to cause skips as you're passing through that field. So it's very important that your chains are in smooth operation. If they have quite a few acres on them, it's important to actually replace them at the beginning of the season. If you're planting over 100 acres per row unit per season, so for this 6-row planter, if we're planting over 600 acres per season, then I highly recommend replacing these chains at the beginning of each season. If you're not planting very many acres per year, then you really don't need to replace the chains every year, but you definitely need to start out the season with them well inspected and well lubricated. The other thing I recommend you do daily, but especially at the beginning of the season, is you clean your seed tubes out. I use this pipe brush, just a simple soft pipe brush, and give it a good brushing. Get all those spider webs and dirt out of there. Something else I highly recommend that you do while you're still in the shop, while you've still got all your tools around, is go ahead and loosen up those parts that you regularly have to adjust your first day of planting. I like to use the tools that I carry with me in the tractor to make that happen and not over tighten, Just cinch them up with the tools that you carry with you. Make sure that you're starting with all your adjustments in the same place so that your adjustments are easy to make as your first day of planting is going along. You want a smooth transition into planting season that you don't have to try and spend a lot of time out there in the sun trying to figure out why in the world one row unit might be planted deep or why the planter won't ride level. So if you go ahead and make those adjustments early, make sure the planter's level and true and everything is at the same setting. That's a very helpful thing when you're first in the field. The final trick that I'm going to show you is a really great way to inspect your seeding depth and seed placement on your first day of planting. This is a simple hay hook that I carry. It's got a fertilizer hose over it to avoid scratching the planter. You're going to signal to your operator to drive slowly, explain to him what you're doing, take your hay hook and simply lift that closing wheel and walk behind him as he's traveling up that field. If you go 17.5 feet, that should leave an open trench that you can easily count 1/1000th of an acre. You multiply how many seeds dropped in that 17.5 feet, and that's going to tell you your population for a 30-inch row spacing. It's also going to show you exactly what your planting depth is. Make sure you're not over compacting and smearing those sidewalls, and that you've got really good seed placement. So that's just a handy little trick that you can do. Lift that closing wheel right up. Makes it really easy to inspect that row unit. Coming up next, Barbara is going to be covering seeding depth and soil conditions, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.